Off. Hello and welcome back to Alchemy with Shiana Lee. And today you are in for a really special treat because I have one of my beautiful friends, Sara, with me on the couch. Actually, we are connecting live and in person for the first on live in person podcast.
Yay.
And we're going to be dropping into, we haven't thought of a title or anything yet. It's going to be a real casual chat. Sara is pregnant. She is a mum. She is incredible. We were talking about how we knew each other and how we connected, and we actually couldn't specify the exact moment in time we connected, but it was an online connection. And she's been around the Sunshine Coast for a while doing a lot of like tantric things, a lot of enlightenment in the bedroom things. And yeah, we connected online and met in person. And it's just absolutely been so delicious and organic since the get go. I'm in her home right now, actually, and it's really nice. And she's just a beautiful soul with like, she is so fierce and courageous, and transitioning into motherhood and seeing her blossom in that space has been so inspiring, especially from her work with sexuality and how she's moved through it with her partner with such grace and consciousness and like fire. And I'm like fucking here for it and in love with it. So that's Sara. That's my introduction to Sara.
What an intro. I love it.
And today we are blessed to actually be getting like deep into the textures of birth and death and sex and liberation. And yeah, Sara's going to be talking to us and sharing it, all her story with us. So grab yourself a cuppa, sit down with us, and I'll let Sara introduce herself and yeah, her essence and energy with you.
Oh, thanks. What an intro.
Yay.
I love that. I love that we don't even really know how we connected, but we both feel like we just kind of met and we're like, oh, I feel like I've known you forever, just one of those like soul connections.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good to be here. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I just reached out to you a couple of weeks ago and I was like, I'm really feeling before I enter into this next birth portal that like I want to share my past birth story and how healing it was and just this initiation into motherhood and kind of just like get that out there because I've written about it but I haven't spoken it like fully like out loud. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes,
Yes.
it's honestly an honor. I love hearing about people's birth stories and what they've moved through and how it's initiated them and expanded them and like killed parts of them and awoken parts of them. So I think it's going to be such an honor, and I'm super glad that I get to like get it in person.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just a bit about me. Live on the Sunshine Coast. I've worked in the tantric sacred sexuality and relationship coaching therapy space for the past, oh God, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years. Been through, big journey of that. It's definitely changed forms and expressions many a times. But yeah, now I'm mostly kind of coming into just being a full-time mother again as I get ready to birth my second child. And yeah, that's me, really.
Yes, amazing. I love that. I'm here for it. I'm here for the motherhood journey all the way. So I honestly think it's going to be so good to just get it out through your voice and talk about your birth story. So,
Yeah.
and I haven't even heard the full story yet. So we
Cool.
kind of dipped into it a little bit before, and we're like, no, we must stop because we're getting into all of these deliciousness before we begin. But yeah, I would love for you to just take us away, babe. Take us on your journey if that feels good.
Yeah, I was trying to think of like where should I start, but I think there was a pretty cool like pre-story, like a bit of it was the most unconscious conscious like I was consciously conceiving my child in the sense that like I was so conscious of it happening in my body, but I wasn't consciously trying to have a child. And it was the weirdest experience. I was just sharing with you before that I was really deep in like, the breath work and the embodiment space before I conceived my boy. And every time I would drop in to do a practice and do a breath work, it would just take me straight to my womb. And I would just feel like my womb energetically kind of preparing and clearing out and getting ready to carry a child. But I'd only met my partner maybe, so when we conceived our boy, we'd only been together for I think 10 months at the time. Actually, before I met my partner, I was really connecting to like my baby spirits, I guess. And I always felt like there was just two of them. Always felt like it was going to be a girl and a boy. And yeah, I went through like, I was, I think, single for about 2 years before I met my partner. And that was the longest I'd been single for many, many years. Before that, I'd kind of like jumped from relationship to relationship and really like treasured those 2 years and went deep on my own, healing journey of like healing my relationship to my body and my sexuality and my relationship with men really. But yeah, I think maybe a year and a half into that, I was like, okay, like, I'm in my early 30s now. I think I was 31 when I met my partner. So I was like, okay, I'm feeling like I really want to be a mother, like I really want to consciously start dating more consciously and like starting to date men who actually have potential, like fatherhood potential. Yeah.
Yes, isn't that different?
Yeah, and I wasn't meeting many, to be honest.
Oh no.
I wasn't meeting many, and I started going on I'd already been on like a deep journey of like healing my sexuality and my doing a lot of womb work. But I ended up going and getting a couple of womb massages by this really wise lady. And she actually said she must have felt that I was like, wanting to have children. And I think we started talking about it, and she said, well, why don't you ask your spirit babies to help you find their father?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, why haven't I thought about this before? What? Like, how is this not like common knowledge? Like, duh, like I'm connecting to them. Why don't I just ask for their assistance?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did. I started connecting to them and asking them to, oh, and she even said, like, because I think at the time, like, I wanted to meet someone that was like maybe in the industry or like kind of deep in the work and deep in like the community, like I was at the time. And I think she even said to me, like, maybe he's not going to be like what you think he's going to be. Like, maybe he's just going to work. I think she even said, maybe he's just going to work at the supermarket, but like, but he'll be on his own journey, like he'll be on his own journey. And then, yeah, it turns out, I think it was in like maybe 4 or 5 months after that conversation with that lady, I'd had a like couple of months off dating, coming back to myself, and I was coming back into the dating world, and I jumped on Bumble and we connected. And yeah, he worked at Woolworths at the time.
What? No way. At Woolworths?
Yeah. Yeah, he was like the
That's
manager
classic.
of like the produce section at like my local Woolies. And actually, funny enough, like obviously he met my mum and stuff, and she was like, I've seen him at Woolworths before. I've had conversations with him at Woolworths. I was like, oh, how funny is that?
Oh my God. Was that like when that happened and when he said he worked at Woolworths, did you get like a ping ping, like this is the signal, like it's him?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So like listening to my mum and dad's story about how they met, like they would often tell us as when we were kids. And I remember my dad saying to me, when the first time I saw your mother, like I knew she was going to be my wife.
Oh, love those
And
stories.
I love that like fairy tale thing. But I was like, I think I held on to that. I held on. I was like, when I meet him, I'm going to know. And it's like, that just wasn't my story. Like that wasn't true for me, like I didn't meet him and was like, oh, he's the one. It was like, I was like, oh, he's cool. And then we started like climbing mountains together. Oh, we lived around the corner. Like we'd both just moved to kind of the same suburb, and we had like a mountain just down the road. So we started just climbing the mountain together and going to yoga. I started taking him to I was doing aerial yoga at the time. So I was like, come to aerial yoga, and we just kind of started hanging out, but it just flowed. It flowed easy, and I was like, oh, I like this guy. But then very quickly, probably within like a month or two, like shit got real with us. Like, it's like, okay, the honeymoon period is well and truly friggin' over.
Jeez, that quick, huh?
Yeah, that quick.
What?
And
these babies wanted to come through.
Absolutely.
get your shit together, go through it.
100%. I see that now. It's just like, oh, nah, there was like, because, I definitely had a bit of a pattern of like jumping into relationships too fast and spending every second of every day together and giving them the key to my house really quickly and moving in quickly. And I was like, I don't want to do that next time. But
Yeah.
it kind of just flowed like that. Like it wasn't really in our control. And anyway, so heaps of shit come up. We had like a big conflict wounding thing come up within maybe like 6 weeks of being together, and that just kind of like elevated all of our freaking shadows and wounding. And so I was like in that from like a couple of months of being together, and until I don't know, like after we had our boy, really, like things are definitely a lot more stable and secure now. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but things are great. Like we're really good now, but it's taken a lot of work for us to get there. So in that first year, I wasn't like, this is going to be the father of my child. I was like, fuck, this relationship's really hard. Like it's asking a lot from me and of me, and I'm having to like surrender and look at my shit. Like, I felt like I just spent like 2 years single where, there was definitely, I was doing a lot of shadow work and I was doing a lot of deep diving, but
Yeah.
I think sometimes we think we can do heaps of work, and then it's not until we get into the relationship that we actually start doing the work.
Oh my God, I love that you said that because it's so fucking true. We could be so fine and regulated and whole, and like the deep alchemical work is relational work. I do believe that to be true. And I love even you sharing about how, like in the beginning, like it was hard work and it wasn't this whole like fairy tale, because sometimes we have a belief that things are just click and we just know, and there's this like opening in our bodies. And I see that a lot in our communities at the moment, like that whole like conscious union communities, that it's like your body's going to open and you're going to know. But that is not the case for everybody, and a lot of times like the relationships are the deep portals for you to sort of crack open and be like, holy shit, I've got to attend to all of these things. And like that's, and you're still in a relationship, you've still had beautiful children, one on the way, like, and it doesn't make that relationship any less or more than any others,
Totally.
like, because there is this whole, I believe, just on this outside looking in at the moment, there's this whole marker for this divine union concept that we're seeing at the moment, which is so like pedestalization of that, and not actually looking at the deep processes of what many relationships can be like an initiation for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think like so many of us have attachment wounding, right? Like we didn't grow up with like two fully healthy integrated parents. Like, it's yeah. A lot of people aren't secure. Like we've had to like work on our shit to be able to be in a healthy, secure relationship.
Yeah.
And I think the last pieces of doing that, of that journey, of that work, happen in relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Like relationships aren't meant to just be easy and perfect. Sure, maybe if you've done heaps of work and you've had heaps and heaps of conscious relationships and you've worked through many layers, or you didn't have that many layers to begin with because you did really have a very, very stable home and present caregivers, and your emotions were welcome and all the things. But that's just not reality for most people.
No.
And I think people give up too quickly. I think people
Agreed.
go, oh, the shit's come up and it's really hard to get through that stage.
Yeah.
And people, it's so easy to just download an app and just fucking ditch someone and move on to the next bloody dopamine hit.
Agreed. And I find it's a lot, like it can be like, personally, from my own experience, like I find relationships deeply challenging. Like, and it doesn't, I've done a lot of work, I've done a lot of this, and but I have had a lot of like scarring and imprinting from my childhood. So I personally find being in a relationship super challenging, and a lot of things come up for me. And but and people have this idea of like, well, if it's not easy, it's not in alignment. And it's absolutely false conditioning, because like I don't feel like it has to be easy. It doesn't have to be toxic and unhealthy. But it definitely, I definitely feel like, there's an element of like putting in the hard work and really.
And that doesn't end. It's not like you just go through like hard part of your relationship and you put in hard work and then everything is like fucking happy days and like butterflies and rainbows for the rest of your life.
I wish.
But do you though? You know, like
Yeah.
I feel like
Absolutely.
I feel like it's just a part of life. Like, you know, we're not like things aren't always meant to be easy. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like if they were, we wouldn't be evolving and growing. And,
Yeah.
you know, like parenthood is not easy. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. It is so deeply challenging. It brings up all your shit, all of your childhood wounding. It is deeply uncomfortable. You know, you're wiping shit, you're cleaning piss and shit off the floor. Like, it's not fun like all the time. Like it is, you get to play with your kids and like it is fun, but most of the time it's just actually really hard work. But
Yeah.
it's like there's so much reward, there's so much love, there's so much connection. It's like the thing that is the hardest is also the thing that is the most like deeply rewarding and loving. And I feel that about my relationship now, you know.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
getting emotional. I'm on my bleed too, so it's not going to take me much to have a little bit of a cry. So.
Oh, same. I'm deeply hormonal at 35 weeks pregnant, so it's all cool. We can cry.
It's so beautiful to hear that because, you know, I do know snippets of your journey and how, you know, you weren't together long, 10 months before you had Otis.
Yeah.
And then
well, when he landed in
your womb. Yep.
we
So
conceived him.
that is like, it's not a great deal of time. A lot of people are literally getting out of that first honeymoon stage and attachment stage and like sinking into their bones of being in a container type thing, or you know, and like it's just beautiful to hear how that was like so initiating for you, especially for you both, and the time that you had cruising around, and then like now where you are, feeling like that's beautiful.
I honestly think that if our son didn't land when he landed, then I don't know if we would have made it through that really hard time, that like real gritty wounds fucking triggered all the time stage, because I think he was kind of like, he was the glue that held us together. He was like the deep commitment that we needed, the skin in the game that we needed to really like face our shit and to do the work. You know, we've both done the work individually as well within our relationship. Like we've both like seeked one-on-one support with a therapist and coach, and then we've done the couples work as well. And we've committed to that, and we've done that because we realized that things weren't like, not all of our dynamic was healthy and there were still some toxic elements to our relationship. And we were both committed to showing our child and children now that like it is possible to have a healthy relationship. Like we didn't want to just pass on the same generational shitty behaviors and model unhealthy relationships like we had seen and been modeled as well. So we knew that there was another way, and we're both committed to doing the work. I think that's the most important thing when you're like looking for a partner, looking for someone to have kids with, looking for a life partner, you know. It's just like, are they committed to like showing up and doing the work with you? Because it's gonna take work. Like, you know, also being a relationship therapist, like I work with so many people that get together and then they just like they put in all this energy in the first few years of their relationship, and then they stop putting in the effort.
I agree.
And they like, if you had a business and you put all this energy and time into like marketing and all the things and building a business, and then all of a sudden you stopped investing in that business, like it would die. Like it's not going to continue to flourish just because you've like invested some time and money in the first few years. Like it's a continual thing, and same with relationships.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes, like even when you were just speaking about how like the, you know, the glue being the, you know, the kid and being pregnant and going through that journey together, I can sometimes see how that is not the glue in a lot of people's relationships. That becomes like the avoidance strategy and the distraction, you know. So they will utilize spending all of their time and energy on just the kid or whatever, and not turn towards each other and the relationship. And then that's when they actually fall apart and sort of crumble, or like, you know, you're not, energy flows where it goes, you know. The focus, what is that saying? Oh my god,
energy flows where attention goes.
Exactly. So the attention is just focused on the kids. Like, yeah, the kids will have a lot of that love and energy and attention, which is great, but there's nothing that happens in the relationship,
Yeah.
and then that becomes a way, like a wedge between intimacy and not an actual activation or initiation of like, this is the legacy and this is the imprint of relationship that we want to pass on to our child, which I think is so important. And the key factor that you said there is the willingness to show up. And I think that that's something that so many people lack. There's a difference between like a willingness and a wanting to show up and do the work and do the thing and do the hard and challenging thing. And there's so many people that will just be resistant, avoidant, and like think of every excuse not to. Oh, well, it should be easy. Oh, well, it's too hard. Oh, well, it's no. If there's like an actual tangible like essence and energy of wanting to and trying to show up, that's all you fucking need, I believe.
Yeah. And the juggle's real, especially when you have kids. Like, it's so hard. It's like, especially if you don't have family support, like you go from having all the time in the world, you know, to go on dates and to like have sex and to do all the things, connect, to having like no time on your own anyway, like having another human there all the time. So it's hard. Like, and we're not perfect. We go through months of like completely just investing our time and energy into other things like moving house. You know, I think it was even a couple of months ago when we moved into this new house, we moved in and we're like, shit, we weren't in a good place because we just spent like we went on a holiday, so there was a lot of time and energy into planning that and then being away, and then we were moving house and I was growing a baby, and we just kind of neglected our relationship for a few months. We got here and we're like, shit, like we need to change that. We need to start having check-ins every week again. We need to like get a babysitter, ask my mum to take my boy again and spend some time. We need to reconnect, and we need to like prioritize the relationship again so that everything else can flow. You know, and my partner said to me in that time, he's like, we were talking about his business, and he had an injury, so he hadn't really been doing a lot of work in his business and wanted to start putting energy back into that because he was healed again. And he was like, there's no point in putting energy into the business until we're good, until we're solid, because nothing's going to flow in the business until we are solid and things are flowing here in the home. And I was like, like so I felt like it just like I felt like I had like that was a knowing for me for so long, but I hadn't really landed, or I hadn't heard him speak those words our whole relationship. So I was like, oh, you finally get it. Like we are the foundation for our family and for our home and for our business and for life to flow,
100%.
you know. And when things aren't good with us, like that's going to ripple out into our whole life.
Oh, I love that you fucking said that. And so did it, Stu, because like that is so true. It is the foundation. Like if anything is going shit, not anything is going shit in your life, it starts at home. But it's true. Like I wish more people understood that and grasped that concept. Like the relational dynamic and the pulse that happens between you both in the relationship absolutely is the on flow and the opening to abundance, money, business, like everything, absolutely everything, your children, like everything is like an overflow of the energy that you have in the relationship together.
Totally. And or the lack of, or the ruptures and all the things that we haven't processed and dealt with, like they bleed into everything else. Everything is relational, we're having a relationship with all the things, and
materialistic or otherwise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So back to the story.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember we ended up having a big argument. I think it was around New Year's. We ended up like conceiving our boy, I think at the end of March. This is going from 2021 into 2022. We ended up having a bit of an argument, a bit of a situation around New Year's. We're traveling in the bus. We bought a bus. We were like, let's go travel around Australia in a bus. It took a while for like my partner to convince me, because it was more his dream than mine, because I had done a lot of travel around Australia in my 20s. And anyway, I was like, okay, cool, I can do it in a bus, like I don't want to do the van life thing. Like I need a little bit of luxury now in my 30s. So we bought a very expensive bus and pretty much like sold all of our shit. We only had like a couple of boxes like at families' houses, and then anyway, we didn't like take off straight away. We kind of just hung around, lived out of family houses, and we did some house sits like local on the sunny coast, and yeah, we ended up going away for New Year's. We had a bit of a thing, and then I was like, I don't think I want to be in this relationship. And I actually like ended it fully. It was like within the first few weeks of that year.
Mhm.
And that actually created I don't know, it created some space for us. And within that space, I think the clarity kind of dropped in, that I needed to commit to the relationship, which is like, okay, things aren't exactly how I want them to be now. But I think in that few weeks apart, we were still communicating and stuff. I
Yeah.
saw, I guess, the potential, or like I saw that there was a willingness, and I could see that we were kind of where we needed to be, you know?
Mhm.
So anyway, I recommitted a couple of weeks after we broke up, and then yeah, a few months later, like our son was here.
Mhm.
Well, we fell pregnant. And in that time, I remember, like, you know, one of my mum's friends, she's quite deeply spiritual, and one of my mum's friends is like a psychic, and she would come over to my mum's house and see the bus at the back of the house. And one day she said to me, I've just got to say this because it's come through like 3 or 4 times now, but are you guys trying to have a baby? And we're like, no. And she's like, well, you need to be careful because there is a baby soul hanging around that wants to be conceived in that bus. Clearly, we didn't listen.
Ah.
And, you know, or just either like, even if we were being careful, which I guess we thought we were, he was coming through anyway.
Yeah, they come
Yeah,
like quite strongly for sure. Yeah.
totally,
Mhm.
totally. So yeah, then we were getting ready to go on our trip, and we are doing a house sit, and we found out we're pregnant. And um it was a bit of a shock, but it was like we were happy about it. Like I think I knew I was pregnant, and I did a pregnancy test and it come back negative. So we'd kind of had a conversation of like, what would this mean for us if I was pregnant? And he was
Yeah.
like, you know, I would be happy. Like it would be beautiful to have a child with you. And I was like, I guess I would too. Like I do want to have a child, but I don't necessarily like feel ready, or I want to have a child right now or bring a child into this current situation within our relationship, and about to go away in the bus for a year or so.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, anyway, and then I think a week later, I was like, well, I probably should do another pregnancy test. Found out we're pregnant, and we were just over the moon. Like, sure, there was fears and stuff, but I think for like a whole week, we were just like crying in happiness. Like it
Yeah.
was, yeah, it was beautiful. We were really happy. And then yeah, we went away in the bus for a couple of months, and yeah, I think after maybe 3 or 4 months, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm just going against my natural desire to just nest and put roots down and be around my family and be around my community and be supported through this
Mhm.
birth and motherhood initiation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Powerful.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I love that you shared that. One of my favorite things was like going into like how strong the baby wanted to come through. Like it's
Mm,
so I believe that babies, they just know. They choose their
totally.
people. I'm very big on like communication with like your spirit babies because I think if you're like in tune, they definitely hang around. They actually hang around us for some time before they're even conceived. And so it's really interesting that you're doing that, going around in your little bus, and then you like wanted to like settle down and plant roots and yeah, move into like the birthing realm. When did you do that? Like how long before you actually had birth? Gave
I
birth?
think we only moved into our place like maybe 2 months before,
Oh,
yeah, we
that's still
birthed
pretty
him. No,
long.
it wasn't. It wasn't. But yeah, when you were saying that, actually, I remember sitting and having a cup of tea with my mom on her balcony. And this must have been like just after I broke up with Stu. Like I was just saying that, like we went through a thing around New Year's, and I was like, no, I'm done with this relationship. And I was sitting there having a cup of tea with my mom, and I was like, I don't know why, but I still get this really strong sense that I'm going to have a baby this year. Like I'm going to fall pregnant at least this year. And I was like, it really scares me because well, one, I just like broke up with someone that I, you know, thought
Yeah.
like could have been the father of my children.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, I was like, I still just felt it. And she was like, yeah, I feel it too. She could feel it. She felt it before me, I think. She
That it
was
was
like,
just hang
yeah,
it was just hanging
yeah.
around. Like,
She
yep.
was like, you're having a baby next year. She said this in 2021. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like,
Absolutely.
okay. And then I started feeling it. So, yeah. And then after that break, when we got back together, that's when I started to go, okay, maybe this is the person I am meant to be with and like have start a family with, even though things still weren't great. But yeah, so then we ended up landing back, I think maybe in August, I think we come back to the coast and we were staying in a friend's cabin and looking for a place. And we both went through a pretty big initiation at that time because, I was running my business. I was still running a program, but it was about to end. And then I had like still a couple of months before I gave birth where I was like, like what do I do in that space of like it's not really long enough to kind of create something and launch something else, but I also don't want to just go and get a job. So it was like a bit of a weird time for me in that as well. Like, what do I do in these last few months? I still feel like I need to kind of be bringing in money. And Stu had been fired and been, I think, maybe like unemployed for 6 months while we were in the bus because it was COVID time and he didn't want to
Oh,
do the
yeah.
mandate thing. So he got fired from his job. So we were kind of landing back on the coast, him being like, shit, I'm about to become a father. I don't have somewhere to live. I don't even have a job. Like, yeah, she got real. We were like, oh my God, okay, let's find somewhere to live. Like, well, let's find a job and somewhere to live. But it all flowed really effortlessly. I think within like 2 weeks of being back, he had a full-time job, and then maybe like another week we'd found a place.
Yeah.
Which felt like a bit of a miracle, especially finding a
Yeah.
place because it was like same as now, just
Hectic.
really hard to find rentals.
Yeah.
But yeah, it all flowed. We landed on this beautiful 10-acre property, and the second house on the property is like a shed house. And
Oh, were you at
yeah,
that house when you gave birth
yeah,
that I met you at?
yes,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
There you
yeah.
go.
I didn't end up giving birth at home, but
Yes.
yeah,
So that's what I want to talk to you about. Okay.
yes,
So moving into the birthing realm, right?
yeah,
You've just planted your feet, you've moved through it, you've obviously gone, okay, this person I'm going to have a baby with. And I really want to drop into the space that we were talking about outside as well, about how gripping to the relationship and then letting it
mm,
go and opening it up. I think that's going to be really potent. And yeah, because and then actually still even in this space, like moving into birthing, you still were a little bit unsure, right? Like you were expressing before this podcast that yeah, you were still unsure and you were like holding on to like wanting to have this beautiful, I actually remember what you said, so I'm going to share a little bit of it.
do it.
So you were like gripping, you felt like you were sort of gripping to the relationship and gripping to like having it perfect or making it like not a broken home. You wanted the mother and the father and the baby, to not pass on like a legacy or a more trauma and attachment wounding. So there was this like wanting to hold on to the relationship at one point where it felt like it was gripping and making it like a bit too intense, and things were going like maybe not the best in the relationship still,
Yeah,
even up into the birthing realm, right?
yeah,
And then you got to a point where you kind of let it go and you brought it out and you made that subconscious shit and muck that was going on for both of you, because like I believe that birth is a portal, right? So the first initiation is always like your survival fears and fears for the child and
yes,
their survival. So deeply family dynamics, like all of these things. Can you survive? Can you survive in relationship? Can you survive in a house? Can you survive with money? Like all of these deep things is the first initiation, I believe, of like
yes.
the birthing portal.
That was very much what I was going through. I
Yes.
was like, fuck, I'm going to be a single mom.
Yeah.
Like, how will I survive? This is intense.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah. And there
yeah,
was a point where you actually got together and you kind of like spoke and like activated, like brought it out, like the truth of what was in that space. Like, I don't know if we are going to be good parents together. I don't know if we can do this together. I don't know if we should put our children first and actually have like a conscious co-parenting relationship if it's
mm,
going to keep being like toxic and um yeah, like not toxic, but have like unhealthy dynamics that we're
yeah,
kind of like showing our children. And you kind of brought it all up. And then you basically were like, the bringing it to like air, giving it a bit of like energy and allowing it space to sort of move allowed you sort of like let that go and surrender
Yeah.
and soften and open and move into a different space with your relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like I was gripping. I was like, oh, like we need to like get this good and perfect and do all the work and have healed this before the baby comes. And it's like, well, that just wasn't reality. Yeah, and we were both doing the work. We were doing individual work at the time. We were doing couples work. But I just felt like I was really holding on because I was so afraid. Like all of my fears, with deep fears, were coming up. And I think biggest fear was about being a struggling single mother. I was like, I just don't see that life for myself. I was like, I want to have a happy, beautiful, conscious dynamic and family dynamic. And exactly, moving through the big survival fears. I was also grieving. I was grieving so much. Like I was like having big cries, like almost every day, like for months leading into the birth portal. And I was like, I don't even know what I'm crying about. I just feel like I'm just like shedding and letting go. I'm just like grieving, I guess, this not being how I pictured it being. And I'm just grieving like my life about to completely shift and change.
Right, because I don't think we do enough honoring for that, for women and men as well. But I'm going to speak about women because we're talking about being a woman and birthing. But that whole like releasing the maiden, like you're releasing this whole life that you, and even the future you, like the future woman without children and the future, like whatever it may be, you do grieve, and you have this like rite of passageway that we don't honor in today's society, well, in Western society anyway, of like death to that and releasing of that, and then moving into like motherhood and mother and embodying mother, and what does that mean. And even now we do not have like, that we don't allow like the older wisdom and generations, like we have such poor treatment of our older generations that basically pass on their legacy and their wisdom, and we don't do that. And so it's this weird experience of like a lack of rite of passage, and you're kind of like flailing around and a little bit like lonely and lost in that.
Totally. It's
like,
very isolating.
yeah, for sure.
And at the time, my two best friends were getting ready to like leave the coast.
Yeah.
So like I felt like I was just transitioning in so many areas of my life. I was just being asked to just let go and surrender. And it was hard because I was gripping, because it was scary. I didn't know, like I couldn't see what was on the other side. I could not see. And it's scary to let yourself go into that big death portal. I felt like I'd done so many deep plant medicine journeys. I've been like deep in the like personal development realm. I'd gone deep into shadow work before. I'd done so many, like I feel like I'd had so many like dark nights of the soul or whatever, like so many death portals. But there was nothing you could compare it to. It was like, it was just, yeah.
But nothing, and we and you spoke about this like a couple weeks ago about how like sometimes the most like deep work you can do is the deep mundane like human work. Like we have this like plethora of like things that like, oh, spiritual is this and all of these things, but sometimes the deepest fucking work is the human like initiation work, births, deaths, closings, openings, like just your human shit is like the deepest, most powerful transitions. And I don't think we honor them as spiritual rites of passage.
Absolutely.
Just as they are.
Yeah. I feel like becoming a mother completely like had to shatter every single identity that I had like created for myself and gripped onto. And it was very like discombobulating, It's like, who the fuck am I? What is going on? But yeah, so I just let myself grieve. I had a pretty like chill couple of months like leading into the birth portal, besides all the other stuff. But I felt like I was slowly like letting go of that grip. And yeah, the way that I kind of envisioned it is like I was holding onto this basket full of eggs, and the basket was falling apart, but I was like gripping it, and I was like, no, you must be in this shape and this form and like hold together. And then eventually I just like put it down, and that was like metaphorically like the relationship and all the expectations and things and how I wanted things to be and go, and the different experience I really wanted to have at that time. And when I put it down, it was like, oh, it was like just took so much pressure off from both of us. And we were just like, okay, like let's just see what happens on the other side of birth. Like if we're not meant to be in intimate partnership, and we're just meant to do this as like co-parents, like we will find a way to do it in a healthy way. You know, like we do love each other greatly, we respect each other greatly, and we are so dedicated to being amazing parents. And if that can't happen together in intimate partnership under the same roof, even, like, so be it. We'll cross that bridge when it comes, you know, which was nice. And so I haven't actually mentioned yet in the story, but this whole pregnancy, we were planning on having a free birth. So we were planning on birthing outside the medical paradigm. So we weren't planning on having a doctor or a medical midwife at the birth. We were kind of planning on doing it ourselves, which felt kind of naive and like quite big for like the first birth and everything else we were going through. But
I'm here for it.
yeah.
Yes.
But we were choosing it very consciously, and we were doing the educational work. We weren't just going into it blindly. Like I listened to probably like 50 to 70 hours of like free birth stories. I did a free birth course online with the Free Birth Society.
That's good.
Yeah. And I was reading books, I was educating myself. And then once we'd landed back on the coast, we seeked out a traditional midwife who we spent like 2 half days with, like full on education. So she was basically teaching us everything about.
So you weren't going into it blindly.
No. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so that is really good because a lot of people do. That's a lot of education, I believe.
Yeah.
That's way more education than a lot of people do.
And that's why I'm so glad, even though we ended up birthing in hospital, which you'll find out more about once the story progresses, but I am so glad that I chose that path, because I would have never taken on that responsibility of educating myself to that depth if I was even choosing on having like a doula there, to be honest. I feel like I would have kind of outsourced like that.
Yeah. Do you feel like having that much education and doing that, because birth is such a hidden aspect in our society, it actually really pisses me off to like, it makes my blood boil that we have actually pathologized, like medicalized it, and kind of kept it like this thing that you can't do by yourself. And we don't know, so like there's so much about birth I don't know, and it's like such a normal thing. Like when I did all my doula training and stuff like that, I was like, we do what? It does what? Do you believe that that really helped you understand your body more and get in touch with your body more for the birthing process? Or do you feel like it was, cool?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think just choosing to birth in that kind of sovereign way really helped me to, I guess just like take full responsibility, like whatever that kind of meant at the time. But it felt like more of a sacred kind of portal and a choosing. And even though I said we didn't have like, that traditional kind of birth support, we still had my mum in the space who had done doula training. She hadn't been at many births or anything, but she had done some training. And I also had my best friend in the space who was just, I just trusted to hold space, like, and that could meet me in the other realms as well, not just this physical realm. So, so I guess I'll probably just dive into the birth story now, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I would love to know personally what you did. Okay, what made you choose to kind of do it sort of outside of the system? That is really, because I feel like we're seeing this wave of comeback in that at the moment, birthing outside of reclaiming birth, because the medicalized birth has only been in hospitals for the last 100 years. Like it's totally crazy. Totally. And so I want to know, like, what helped you both to make that decision? What you had to kind of let go of, like what ideas you had to let go of, and what fears you kind of had to face around that. Because I know personally, like if I was ever going to have a baby, like I would do it this way. And like the biggest thing you have to surrender to is actually the fear of like death, right? Because you don't have that support around you. But it's just fucking crazy because people birth in like, in Russia and that, they just like are working right up until they go around and just give birth like on the fields and stuff like that.
Totally.
I think Slovakia, or is that the place?
I don't know.
Or is that a dessert?
No, I think it's a place.
Is it?
Yeah.
Slovakia.
Oh, the
So the
Slovak.
women were telling me like that was a real experience. Like in my doula training, they were saying that the women are quite hard and
Yeah.
quite like they will be in the fields like working, and this is their lived experience. Like birth wasn't a thing that we make it over here, and they will have birth. Like they will just go around, squat, give birth to this child, and like right then and there, and then that's it. And there's no fear that kind of locks up the body or anything. It's just kind of like a normal process. So anyway,
Totally.
I would love to hear a bit more about that decision making process before we get into the reality of it.
So I think in the early days, I was always like, I don't know, I always just saw myself having a home birth at least. I was like, I don't love hospitals. In fact, I fucking hate hospitals. Like they're like, you know, everyone's sick there. Like, why would I want to birth in this like hospital where people are sick and dying? Like,
I know. That's one of the things that I can't understand is like you like that everything is energy, and the hospital is a place where people are injured and in pain and sick, and there's so much like depression and grief and all of that in this like and you want to go and give life in there.
And it's like real sterile, and they have like LED lights, and it's not where I feel comfortable and I feel safe.
Whose body would though? Like honestly, as a woman, like if you need to open and be soft and surrender and open, your cervix needs to open and feel safe. Why the fuck would you feel safe in those environments?
Yeah.
Like
I get it. I think some women think that like birth is, a medical emergency, and that they are going to be safest where there is doctors and midwives and stuff. And I get that. And then I respect that, because that's just what we've been told forever.
Yeah.
Like that's our conditioning around birth. It's like even my mom, I was birthed in a hospital. She had my brother in a hospital. It wasn't really a thing back then, home birth for her. However, I think I feel very connected to my whole ancestral lineage. And I'm like, and I know, I don't know how many years back, but I know that like there's women in my lineage that just casually birthed at home. Like birth is quite simple and doesn't have to be this thing, and isn't like most of the time it isn't a medical emergency. And I think that in hospitals, it becomes a medical emergency because one intervention leads to another intervention, that leads to another intervention, leads to another intervention. Then all of a sudden, your baby is being cut out of you.
Exactly.
And it's just disrupting that normal physiological process of birthing a baby. So I don't know, very early in the pregnancy somewhere, I was just like, I think I somehow just learned about the concept of free birth. And I was like, I think that's what I want to do. And I spoke to my partner about it, and he was kind of like, that's pretty crazy. Like, you're not going to have a midwife there. And I mean, to be honest, I think that if we were in a different situation, and like if we had a different relationship, and there was like we'd built, like we'd bought a house together and we had lots of savings together and things like that, perhaps I would have felt more financially secure to go and spend $7,000 and get a medical midwife to attend my birth. But I wasn't in that place. And I was kind of like, well, we do have savings, but we're traveling, and I think the money piece played a part in there. And then I was going to get like a doula or a birth worker, and then kind of just didn't happen. And I was like, I think we're just going to do it at home. And I think my boy was just like, this is like, he was just telling me like what was going to happen, and who was going to be at his birth, even though we ended up birthing in hospital. And I totally believe that was his journey and my journey, and that was where we were meant to birth. But yeah, it just, I don't know, it just became normalized. And I think once we started listening to the Free Birth Society and listening to free birth stories, and my partner was listening to a lot too, because we were traveling in the bus, and so there was a lot of time in the car, and it just became quite normalized for him quite quickly too. And we're like, okay, this is what we're doing. I didn't have a wild pregnancy. I still had 2 scans with my boy, but that was it. I didn't have any other tests or anything. And both of those times I left the scan just feeling like not good. I was just like, that just didn't feel just didn't feel right to me. It just, something just felt off. So at the end of that pregnancy with my boy, I was like, I think I'm not going to have any scans next time.
Yeah.
And I haven't in this pregnancy
Yeah.
so far. Yeah. And that's just, and I wasn't like, okay, I'm not going to have any scans. You know, I was like, if I feel like I need to have a scan along the way, if I feel like something, you know, is happening, or like if my intuition tells me I need to go and have a scan, I will go and have a scan. It's really about listening. It's not.
I agree. I think that some people can get so attached to, well, control of what they absolutely want, that they don't listen to like their body and their intuition. And I think there is always like, we can get like, I'm pretty radical with my belief systems, absolutely, but I also I'm like, no, but also I do know that there is a time and a place.
Absolutely.
And the biggest indication, like the only thing that you need to be listening to is your body, your intuition, your connection with your child, and that will help guide you and move you along. If you feel like something's off, like, yes, maybe you should go get a fucking scan. Like, don't just not get a scan or whatever because you're so against scans.
Totally.
Like, do you know? Like, I think that that's when we go into territory of things being super dangerous and people like not listening to their intuition and guidance and their body and the wisdom within. And then that's when we see cases of things going a bit skew. Like when they're so, you have to listen to your body.
I agree. And that's not for everyone. Like, you know, and it was also my first pregnancy. So I was like, I kind of just wanted to see my baby. And anyway, I was, but I also did seek medical advice or care at 35 weeks pregnant with my boy. So about the same time now, pregnant, but with my boy, I got this really big rash all over my belly and it just wasn't going away. And then maybe like 2 or 3 days into the big rash, which was just on my belly, I started getting a migraine. And I don't get headaches. Like I never get headaches. And the migraine lasted for a few days. So I started, you know, I checked out Dr. Google and started Googling all the things. And, you know, there was a couple of things where that was talking about some pregnancy rashes on your belly can indicate things like your liver struggling. So it's like, okay, I'm going to go and see a GP. I'm just going to book in and see a doctor and see what they say. And so I went and saw a doctor, and the first thing she did is started Googling it. And I was like, of course. I was like, I've done that. Like,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Made me laugh a little bit. But anyway, she said, look, we'll do some tests. But she said the quickest way to get results and the best way to do that would just be to go to the hospital.
Yeah. Okay.
And she said, I will call the birthing suite at Sunshine Coast University Hospital so that you can just go in there and not have to wait an emergency. But just go in there, they'll do the test and then they'll just get them back rather than us doing the test and then having to wait a week or two.
Yeah.
So I was like, cool, all right, let's do that. So we ended up in the birthing suite at SCOO. I think it was room 4. I'm pretty sure that was the number of rooms.
Yeah. Loving it.
And we ended up like, you know, I got monitored. We were in that room for about 5 hours, I think. Like it took ages. We were getting so tired and so over it. My partner went and got us dinner and we were almost about to leave, just like, okay, can you just call us with the results? We don't have to just sit there on this monitoring machine the whole time. Like, just let us know when you've got the test results. Just as we were kind of getting over it, they came back with the results and said nothing came up. So, but it was funny because we were in that room and I was sitting on the bed and I was like, could you imagine birthing in here? I was like, yuck, like look at these fluorescent lights. And my partner's like, look at the pillow behind you, babe. It says like Queensland government on there. We were just ripping on birthing in the hospital. Little did we know we were going to birth in that exact room.
You fucking did it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's why I remember the number because when I like transferred to the hospital, when I transferred to the hospital and like, you know, they because they just called an ambulance and they pushed me into the room in the bed and I went as I was being pushed into that exact same room, I was like, oh, this is where I'm meant to be. Like this is where my baby wants to be born,
and
you know.
Isn't that interesting? Like I don't believe in things as coincidences. Everything is a fucking sign in my book. And like I believe that we are in like communion with our children, like even if they're in the womb. And like, isn't it interesting if that was his way of like speaking out, like putting that rash on you, making you go to the hospital so you were comfortable and like in that surrounding, like, no, this is where I want to birth, like this is
And we
where I
were
want to
then
come
in the
through.
system, which
Yeah.
was handy because otherwise we hadn't registered our birth with the hospital. It would have been a lot harder to just rock up at the hospital. They had no details about me, you know. So not only were we there putting our energy into the room and he was subtly showing us that he wanted to birth there, but we were also now in the system.
Oh my God, this is like chills. This is
yeah.
so cool.
Oh, look at my legs. I got
know.
goosebumps.
I'm so good for it. Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. So they knew, like, yeah,
Yeah.
he knew.
He knew. Yeah. And then so that was about 5 weeks before birth. And then so we got home, we started setting up the space for birth a couple of weeks before. We had a pool and, you know, had all our little affirmations on the wall. And yeah. And then so one morning we woke up, I think, yeah, it was a Sunday morning. We woke up.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So yeah, we woke up on a Sunday morning and my partner at the time had, I think, Sunday, Mondays off work. So I was kind of like a little bit nervous about like, how do I know if I'm going to go into labor? I don't know what a contraction feels like. What about if you're at work? Like, I don't want to call you home from work and it's like a false alarm, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, he was at home, which was nice. And we woke up pretty early. Like it must have been like 6 a.m., like 5:36 or something. And like shortly after I woke up, I was like, oh, like I'm having some cramps in my belly. Like maybe this is labor, you know? And then like now reflecting back on it, I was like, I remember getting up so many times in the night. And I thought I was like I probably got up like 5 or 6 times to pee. And I thought it was because I needed to pee. But I look back and I think it was just because I was getting like contractions and like that pressure. And so I reckon I was like lightly contracting in the night as well. And then, so yeah, woke up early. It was like, okay, I think they're contractions. Yep, they're definitely contractions. They started getting a little bit more intense. And so I called my mom and I called my best friend and they came over and we just had a pretty chill morning. A big storm rolled in. And so we spent a bit of time watching the storm roll in. And I did try to get a little bit of rest. In hindsight, I wish I went back to bed and tried to actually get some sleep because it was like 24-hour labor in the end. And it was very exhausting. But all the things you don't know in your like the first, you know, labor. And I was very excited, so I called the birth team there like way earlier. And anyway, it was nice. We had snacks and things like that. And then I don't feel like things didn't really kind of start ramping up until like maybe midday. And that's when I'd probably say that I went into like more active labor, was like maybe 1 o'clock early afternoon, where things started to get like, you know, a lot more intense, and to the point where, you know, I was actually like crying through my contractions. I felt like that was just like my way of, I don't know, just dealing with the pain. Like I wasn't crying because I was in pain. I was just like releasing. I was just like, well, I guess my cervix was opening and it was just like, I was just grieving. I was releasing. Yeah. And I got into the pool, but I got in and out the pool a lot. So every time I get into the pool, I felt like things would kind of slow down and labor would stall a little bit. But yeah, I remember my mum's friend came in who was actually like an ex-nurse, and she just popped in to drop something off. Like, I don't know what time it was, but it must have been like early evening, like 6 or 7. And, you know, she just watched me have a few contractions. She's like, oh, I feel like this baby's definitely going to be here tonight. And I don't know why I got that in my head. And, but yeah, I did. And then things started to like get really intense and like, you know, started kind of losing the capacity to really be able to like talk, you know, through. I was just in it. I was just like deep in labor, probably around like, yeah, midnight or maybe a little bit before. And I just started feeling a little bit blocked. Like I felt, I don't know how to explain it. Like I was moving through a lot. And I remember like at one point saying to my like best friend who was kind of there and supporting me through it, I was just like, I'm going through so much right now. And she's like, oh, like what's going on? I was like, I can't talk, like can't like share with you what's happening, but I feel like I'm journeying a lot. And yeah, I feel like there was just like a lot coming up and moving in my space, and I kind of felt like something was wrong. Not wrong, I knew that my baby was safe. I knew that everything was okay. Like I intuitively knew that everything was okay within my body and my baby was fine and we weren't like, their safety wasn't jeopardized. But I just felt like there was like something blocking me, you know. And I got to that point which I had read about and listened about, which I felt like was transition, where I was like, I
Yes.
can't do
I
this
can't do
anymore.
this anymore. Yeah.
Yes. But I felt like I was in that for fucking hours, where I was like,
Right.
where the pain got so intense that I just was like, I don't know how much longer I can do this. It was like, and then that just, I guess, started putting, because it was like a long period of time, like it started kind of putting a bit of doubt into the space. And really, this is where I felt someone that had witnessed a lot of births to just hold that pillar of trust.
Yes.
Hold that pillar of trust to just be like, everything's good, you're good.
Yeah.
But I felt like everyone was being like, you've got this, but I didn't feel that. Like I didn't feel like they were doubting it too.
Interesting.
Yes.
Like energetically picking up the surroundings of like
Yes.
people. There was maybe like a little bit of nervousness, anxiousness,
Yes.
worry,
Yes.
sewed into that, and
Yeah.
not like we've been here, we've got this,
Yes.
you've got this. Fuck yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was obviously doubting myself too. And I felt like I was kind of like between this realm and like another realm. And I was like clearing energy in the room. And I was like literally on my knees, just being like, fucking God, like help me. Like, what is it that I need to feel? What is it that I need to experience? What is it that I need to clear in the space? Like, what do I need to do to get past this fucking block?
Yes, exactly. Like what do I need to see? What do I need to open to? What do I need to release?
Yes.
What fear is like, yes, okay, beautiful.
So I was there. It felt like I was there for a long time. I was at this point, I was really struggling to just kind of breathe and like soften my body through the contraction. I was quite like tense, and everyone was also really tired because like early hours of the morning, my partner was like half asleep on the bed next to me. And I was like, I should have just been okay with that and let him sleep knowing that, but I felt like my baby was about to come. Yeah, because I felt like I was in transition. I'm like, my baby's going to come. No one can rest. Everyone has to be present because I don't want you to miss the birth.
Yeah.
I was in that space, you know. I hadn't experienced it before, so I didn't really know. I just was like, okay, I think I'm in transition. Like, so there was a bit of that too, and kind of feeling like no one really had the capacity to fully be there in the way that I needed them to. And then I think it was my mom, someone put in the space about like going to hospital. And I was like, no, 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 the baby's fine. I'm fine. I don't know if I was fully speaking this out, but I was like, no. I was like in such resistance to the idea of calling the ambulance and going to hospital. I was like, no. And so in hindsight, I guess like my choice to free birth like did come from this like sovereign place, but it also came from fear of being abused and being like treated poorly in hospital and having my boundaries, you know, not listened to, and you know, all the things. You know, I had experienced like a lot of sexual trauma and like trauma that I created for myself as well by, you know, saying yes to men entering me when it wasn't a yes, but also being, you know, sexually assaulted and, you know, being raped before. So I had that imprint, right? And that was babe. And that was like a big, huge journey of like my maidenhood of like, and the healing that I had been on, a big healing journey that I'd been before this moment as well, was really healing my relationship to my sexuality. And that's obviously why I got into sexuality work, you know.
As we do.
Yeah, totally. My pain was my medicine, I guess. But yeah, I felt like my choice to not birth in the hospital was also from that place. But actually, that's what was being asked of me in that moment. That's what was put in the space, and there was such resistance that eventually I was just like, okay, let's call the ambulance. And in my head, I was like, we can call the ambulance, and maybe just having someone say everything looks okay is all I need, and I don't necessarily have to go to hospital. I was like, I can decide whether I get into that ambulance or not. Like they can come and I don't have to get in. So that was kind of what I thought in my head. So we called the ambulance, or someone called the ambulance. They came in. I was actually really scared at this point. I was really felt like I was doing something wrong by free birthing. And I felt like if I went to the hospital, I was also like not going to be treated nice because I was free birthing. I felt like, you know, I was doing something wrong. So there was that, and it was like two male ambulance people that come in. They were really good. They were quite nice, quite respectful. They were kind of just like, I can't even remember really, but they were just like, yeah, you know, you can come with us, you don't have to, kind of thing.
Okay,
And
good.
then eventually it was just like, okay, let's go to hospital. Still feeling like everything was okay, like everything was fine in terms of my baby. Like I was like, my baby's okay. However, I was just feeling just, I guess I just wasn't feeling like fully safe, and like there was something blocking me in that space. So I just surrendered of what was happening at that time. And I got into the ambulance, and I remember the ambulance drive was a lot. Like there was a lot of fear moving through me, and my partner was there with me holding my hand, and I was like, I'm not having a C-section, and like going on, like just reminding him of like all of the things that I didn't want in hospital. I don't want like all of these interventions, you know.
It's important to have that like somebody that can advocate for you, because as you said, you're not really with it. You're in like two different realms at once. Your body is going through this huge thing. You definitely need like a support safety, like somebody who's going to advocate for your body and your boundaries while you're in
Totally.
that space.
And my mum and my friend were coming to the hospital as well. They were like following us in the ambulance in a car. But I wasn't prepared for the hospital. I hadn't like, I don't know, I was kind of naive, and I was kind of just like, I felt like everything was going to be okay. And I felt like I was just going to birth at home. I didn't pack a bag for the hospital. We didn't have the baby seat in the car, like nothing, you know? So anyway, all that fear was coming up, and but honestly, at this point, I was so exhausted and so done that I was like, kind of like, would have considered some sort of like pain drugs in hospital. I was like, this is just intense. Like, I actually don't, I'm still in this
Because
place
how
of
long
like,
were you moving through labor at this point, like active labor?
I feel like active labor at this point had been like, oh, I don't know. So what, maybe it started at like 1, and I got to the hospital at 4, just after 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this was like 3 a.m. So I felt like, yeah, like over 12 hours,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay. Yeah.
And like maybe a good 3 hours of like, this is like, you know, this is wild, and
Yeah.
like I'm not coping kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
So get to hospital. Yeah, got wheeled into the same room. I think it's room 4.
That's
I don't know if I
crazy.
just made that up because 4 is my favorite number, but I'm pretty.
Well, that's the story. This is the
Yeah,
story
yeah,
we're embedding.
totally. And I said, yeah, well, they did advocate for me, and I came in and the lights were on. I was like, turn the lights off, turn the fucking lights off. And they were really good. They listened, they dimmed all the lights. They
Wow.
were like really like respectful, like, okay, what's your birth plan? And at this point I could speak, but I was like kind of just like, you know, basic stuff, and everyone else was sharing with me. And I was like, they were like talking about you know, what they can do to help me with pain. And I was like listening and kind of considering it. My partner was like, no, you don't want like drugs. Like, and so I'm glad he kind of advocated for me in that sense, because I didn't actually know how close I was to giving birth. So I got to the hospital just after 4. My boy was born at 6:38. So I only had a couple more hours.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, anyway, I said yes to a vaginal examination to see how many centimeters I dilated, and they said I had dilated, I think, 7 centimeters at that point.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, it doesn't fucking mean anything. I think you can dilate the rest in like super quick. But anyway, that felt like, I think it kind of gave me a little bit of like, oh well, like I've got to 7 centimeters. And they knew that I wanted to birth in the water, so they were like, okay, this is the only birth suite that doesn't have a pool. So we'll go and have a look at what other birth suites are available, and we'll go start filling up one of the pools in there, and we can move you to another birth suite. They didn't even have time to do that. They spoke about breaking my waters, because I didn't think my water had broke at that point. And I was kind of like, well, if that's going to help progress the rest of the labor, I'm open to that. However, in hindsight, looking back on it all, when we actually arrived at the hospital, I think I was just like fully in transition then. And I got in, and like before I even got on the bed, I just vomited all over the bed. And I had a hind water leak. So I felt like heaps of fluid coming down my leg and on pooling on the floor. But no one saw that besides my partner and I, and we didn't quite grasp in that moment that that's what had happened. So they didn't even have time to like rupture my waters though, because they did start putting the bands around me and monitoring me and stuff like that. But pretty quickly I was like, okay. And they were talking about, like, I think I was just really thirsty. And so they must have thought you're dehydrated. So they'll kind of think they'll like basically kind of pushing to put an IV in my arm. And then all of a sudden I was like, get all these cords and shit off me. I'm in labor. Like, it's wild. I don't want things around my belly. I don't want like cords on me.
Yeah.
And then I think I'd said yes to the IV. I kind of just like agreed. And then I think maybe she tried to get one in, and I was like, no, actually, I don't want I don't want an IV. And then she pushed again. And this was like probably one of the only times that I felt like she pushed a couple of times about something. And I was like, no, I don't want that. Like, basically kind of fuck off. And looking back, that was really important as well, because it was like, what I was really afraid of was my boundaries being pushed and my no not being respected.
Yes.
And so, yes, the lady did push a bit, but I was able to hold my no, and eventually she backed off. Yeah. And so I think that was kind of a really important part of like this healing journey that I'm kind of getting to. So yeah, I was 7 centimeters dilated. I was like, okay, get all the things off me. And then really quickly I was like, oh, I feel like my body's pushing. You know, I had the fetal ejection reflex where I could feel distinctly that my contractions that from my uterine opening contractions, where it was like opening my cervix to then pushing down and pushing my baby out, I felt a dramatic shift in them, and actually the pushing contractions felt so much easier. So that was a relief. I was like, okay, I'm not in like excruciating pain anymore. But I was like, I'm pushing, and they were like, they did another vaginal examination and said I was 9 centimeters, and said, well, don't push because you're only 9 centimeters. I'm like, well, I'm not fucking pushing. My body's pushing.
Yeah, because your body naturally pushes.
Yeah, exactly.
And they don't tell you that. You don't even know that.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm like, I'm not pushing. My body's pushing. Like, I can't stop this. Like, it's just a thing that's happening in my body. And like, I don't know if I agree on that. Like the whole, you know, I don't know, just like going against what's naturally, your body's naturally doing. Yeah. Anyway, so that was interesting. So I kind of like labored like that on the bed for a little bit on all fours. And I remember it was at this point, I was like, I really need to go to the toilet. Like, I felt like a poo was coming, you know, because it's like once your baby starts pushing down, it pushes everything out. And I didn't actually remember this exact moment until like maybe 2 months after birth or something. And when I remembered it, I just lost it, because I was like, that is fucking hilarious. This is just like how messy and wild birth is. I remember saying like, I need to go to the toilet, and my bestie was there, and she was like, okay, I'll go get someone and we'll like help you to the toilet. And I was just like, nah, I'm not fucking moving. I'm just gonna shit here. Oh no, I found it really hard to move around in labor. Like, I was very in it, especially at the, like in full active labor at the end. I was like, it was very hard to walk or do anything, you know. And I just remember just being like, nah, I'm not fucking going to the toilet. I'm just gonna do it here. Oh yeah, they did. Yeah. But like, I remember being on all fours on the bed, and all I could smell was like vomit in my hair, because I'd vomited everywhere. I was shitting on the bed, and I was like covered in like God knows what, probably just like amniotic fluid and maybe urine. And I was just like, I just felt so fucking dirty and stinky. And then the midwife was like, oh, do you want to go into the shower and like labor in the shower for a bit? And I was like, no one has suggested anything more appealing at this point. Like, I was like, yes. I was like, I can't move for the toilet, but I will move for the shower. So they moved me into the shower, and I was on all fours, and they had like 2 shower heads, and so my partner Stu and my mum was on one side, and they were just kind of showering my back. And I felt like I was in there for a long time, but apparently I was like only kind of like pushing in there for maybe 40 minutes. but I remember that feeling really hard, and I was like, they don't do any, well, my experience of that situation in hospital, there was no guidance for the pushing at all. And so I just felt like a contraction would end, and I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. Like his head was just like crowning kind of like this, but not coming out. And I just felt like I was like, I just have to keep pushing and like roaring him out, essentially. Like it was very primal. Yeah. And I was like, I just got to find some energy after every contraction to just keep going for a little bit. And then eventually his head came out, and I could feel myself tear. I felt the pop. It felt like a pop.
Okay.
Yeah, which was interesting. I haven't really spoke about the fears around tearing, but I did have fears around tearing because I gave my mum a 3rd-degree tear when I was born. Yeah. So I had that kind of imprint and story around birth. And that's what ended up happening for me. I had a 3rd-degree tear. But yeah, getting his head out felt really hard. He was a big boy. But once I had his head out, I knew that the rest was just going to like kind of be easy, or his body was going to come out. And then the next contraction, his body came out. I was still on all fours in the shower. And they passed him through my legs, and I grabbed him, and I was like, oh my God, I fucking did it. Like, that was the fucking hardest thing I've ever done, hands down. It was so hard. My partner dropped down onto the shower floor too, and like held me and like cried with me, and it was so beautiful. But I felt like I was like in a bit of shock, like I think, which is quite common for women. Like I feel like I wasn't quite here yet. I was very still in another realm. I do feel that's true. Like women have to journey into the other realm to bring their baby like back into this realm. Yeah, like I fully feel that. Yeah. And I don't really remember even like anything from there until I was kind of in the bed. Like I can't remember like getting out of the bathroom. But obviously I was helped out of the bathroom and back into the bed, and I was like, I remember feeling relieved. I don't remember feeling like proud. I remember feeling like, fuck, like I failed. I ended up in hospital.
Oh, yeah, of course you would have.
Which sucks, because it was like I still had like an amazing birth, really. Like, sure, I tore, sure, I ended up in hospital, but like I still did it. Like I still had my boy, you know? So yeah, but that didn't last too long. I feel like actually within the first few days of birth, I'd kind of processed enough of it to feel at peace with what happened. But anyway, I do feel like the golden hour after birth was interrupted being in hospital. I didn't feel like I was struggling to get my boy to latch. They rushed me to birth my placenta. They only give you an hour to birth your placenta in hospital.
And then they try and like inject it, inject it, and like, yep.
Yeah, and so they were literally threatening me, like, it's almost been an hour. You only have an hour. The doctor's going to come in here and give you like drugs. I was like, no, he's fucking not. But like, I can't remember if I actually said that, but I was just like, I remember feeling like, fuck you. Fuck your fucking needles and your drugs off. You're not putting them in me. Like,
yeah, I've heard some horrific stories around the placenta and birthing the placenta for sure. So,
and I was scared. Like, I just birthed a 4-kilo baby boy, and I had a like 3rd-degree tear at this point that we didn't know about just yet. But anyway, they ended up bringing a bedpan, and I kind of sat up over the pan and birthed the placenta. But like Stu said, it kind of looked like she'd pulled it out of me.
Yeah, I have heard that a lot.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if that was true, but that was the one thing about hospital that felt really icky to me and really pressury, and it was just not nice. Then they were looking at my tear. She's like, oh, yep, you've tore. She got another like midwife in, and then maybe an obstetrician. I can't really remember, but more people to look at it. And they were like, yeah, you've got a 3rd-degree tear. You're going to have to go into theatre and get properly stitched up. And I just cried. I was just so sad. I was like, no, I'd done so much preparation. perineum massage, working on my fears around
Yeah.
tearing, that I was like, this is not my story. Like, why? Like, what? Like, I was sad. I was so sad. And what I was mostly sad about was like having to leave my brand new baby for hours. Like, I think I had to separate from him for like 4 hours because they have to like go into prepare for surgery, have surgery. I think the surgery itself was over an hour. Then you've got to go into recovery until you can go back to, you know, another birth suite and be reunited with your baby. And so that was really hard. I just remember being like really sad and just feeling like even more of a failure.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just like, I've just failed my baby. I now have to leave him, you know, and go into this surgery. It was shitty. It had, you know, all the stuff. Like, yeah. Anyway, got wheeled into a theater. And then ended up having to have basically an epidural, you know, because they give, I think it was an injection in the spine to numb me from, you know, my torso down, which just felt shit because I did actually, when I first got to hospital, I tried the gas.
Yeah.
I had a, but they were like, you're not doing it properly. You got to breathe in. And I was like, I can't, like, I don't want to, like, it feels weird having like something on my face and then trying to breathe normal. Like, so I didn't feel anything from the gas. I just kind of gave it a go, took it off. But other than that, I was like, I've managed to do all of this without drugs. And now it just feels like that was my plan. And now it feels like a bit of a, you know, kick in the ass that now I'm having to have drugs.
Yeah.
And then have like antibiotics as well. But I do remember like laying on that table and, you know, being numb from my waist down, which is also, there's so much symbolism in all of this, right? Mm-hmm. So one was like, you know, just reminding me of all the times that I'd just been laying in someone's bed completely fucking numb and disassociated.
Yep.
And two, I had my legs up in stirrups and everyone, there was like, I think at least 5 people in the room. They were all men,
yeah,
staring at my gaping vagina. So I had a 3rd-degree tear, but I only had 10% of my anal wall intact. So it was like almost a 4th-degree tear.
Whoa, okay.
And a complicated tear too, not just like boom, straight tear. It was like lots of different layers and stuff. So yeah, like 5 men staring at my vagina in stirrups. I remember at the time not feeling like super phased by it. I was still crying mainly because I just was like sad that I wasn't with my baby and with my partner and like, and at home, just like in our bed, like snuggling, you know, just like in our safe place. But like after processing it and looking back, I just see the symbolism of that too, because, you know, I was sexually assaulted on a back lawn when I was completely maggot drunk when I was 15. And that was how my cherry was popped. I was basically asleep on a back lawn, and someone that I'd kissed earlier that night thought that that meant I consented to them coming and shoving their penis inside of me, you know? And so, yeah, it kind of was very symbolic of me like coming, like closing that maiden journey of like men stitching me up, you know, like it was like closing me again. I don't know. It was just, it actually could have been really traumatic, but the way that I chose to process, like the way that I processed it and the way that I felt about it afterwards was like, actually, that felt like the closing of that cycle of sexual abuse and trauma.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Yeah, it was. I still get goosebumps when I speak about it.
Though, because like sometimes, and we spoke about this, it's like sometimes the things that you don't want to happen and some the things that you're like absolutely afraid of happening are the things that actually bring the closure or bring like it's the medicine we need, the poison, right?
Yes.
Like oh, okay, I didn't really want this, I was terrified of this, I was terrified of like losing control of my body in this space and not being able to say yes or no, or boundaries and violations being crossed, and then there you were flat on your back being numb, you know, and like actually not being able to say yes or no, and allowing yourself to move into that space and move into a space of like trust and safety and whatnot to actually there to them doing the healing work that needed to be done.
Yeah, and
so
they're exactly what they were doing. Like they were healing my vagina, you know, like physically, but it was the experience was so much deeper than that physical thing too. You know, it was like it really did, and having the whole experience that I had and having those like kind of boundaries trying to be kind of pushed and violated, and then I was like no, and then they respected. And then even so far, like even as far as like also there was lots of little ways throughout the birth that the midwives were really advocating for me, you know. Like, you know, when I was pushing, a random doctor just came into the room and like shining his torch, and the midwives were like, turn the torch off, she doesn't want lights, you know. Like yeah, so that there was a lot of little things like that. And you know, I guess the placenta thing as well, like I'm just like, no, I'm not having the drug. Like, and I think they ended up giving me like an hour and 15 minutes before that whole thing happened. But anyway, I didn't feel violated. I felt like I was respected in the hospital, which was really healing. Yeah. And they eventually I, you know, reunited with my boy, and they really wanted us to stay overnight in the hospital. And my partner and I were like, actually, that's not happening. Like, that's not our desire. Like, we desire to go home as soon as possible. And yeah, it was like a full-on rest of the day because, you know, he was birthed at 6:30 in the morning. We didn't leave the hospital, I think, until about 9:30, 10 at night. It was probably early afternoon by the time I like got back into the room, and then they just like absolutely smash you with like so much information, which is so overwhelming.
About breastfeeding, about and vitamin K shots, and but like,
can we give your boy a friggin' vaccine?
Like straight away.
Yes,
insane.
It's so insane, and we were just like, no, 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 and like sometimes they would look at us like, oh, like. No one said no, or like that's not very often people say no.
Like, because it's the key point here that I really want to like really hammer into is like we are not educated. We actually like you speak like if I wasn't in the birthing rooms and this, that, and the other, and in the hospitals with my sisters and friends and you know people I love, like I wouldn't fucking know anything about birth. And I hear birth stories all the time because I love them. And they're so empowering for women. We need to hear other people's birth stories so that we actually have education because they go into it and then they get like the maiden is still at play, right? And they're like a bit naive because if it's your first time birthing, you don't know what you can say yes to, what you can say no to. You just they just and they do this like the nurses, midwives, doctors do this like 100 times a day. So you're just like you're not actually viewed as horrible as this is. You're just like a job. You're not viewed as like an individual person with your own needs, wants, desires, etc. You're kind of like a flick and tick.
Yes.
So they will just go through the notion because that's their job to go through the flick and tick.
And most people think that they don't have a choice in that they have to say yes.
They just think it's normal. Like, they think that everything's normal. But once you're educated and once you do your own research and listen to other people's stories and what they went through and what really benefit them, then you can make your own informed choice and like consent to what you want to consent to instead of just sort of, and this is the paradigm we live in now in society, right? We just go along with whatever because like it's just the way it is. But it's not just the way it is.
Totally.
Because and that's what would happen. They would have a lot of young mums or like new mums that come through and just yep.
Yeah.
And it's actually
And they like because they speak about the risks all the time. They're like, yes, well, there's a risk of this, so we've got to give you this and that, but they don't tell you how small the risk is. And actually in like how big the risk of the other thing is that they're offering you. Like they don't tell you that. Like induction, like they're like, oh, there's a risk if you go over however many weeks, you know, we need to induce you, have a big baby. Like what? There's actually so much risk in induction, and there's so much evidence that induction then leads to an epidural and like leads to like forceps, you know, like forceps, it's like it just leads from one intervention to the next.
And like they don't even tell you that realistically that, oh my God, if I have to hear somebody say that their baby's too big to birth one more time, like that is like the key, but they don't actually tell you. And you can't tell people, but like they don't know how to measure your baby.
I
They don't
know.
know. They actually,
Totally.
it's so inaccurate. But that is the number one scare tactic. So your body
Yes.
closes and goes, oh my God, I can't give birth to this
Yeah.
baby because it's too big. And then they, before you know it, it's getting induced, getting like this, getting like, and it becomes quite a slippery slope. As soon as you get one thing, the risk of getting a fucking cesarean increases by like 40 to 50%. Like,
Totally.
crazy.
And they did that to me in my whole first pregnancy. Like, you know, even when I had a dating scan and I had a 20-week scan, and even at my dating scan, you know, they were like, oh, are you sure? Like, I think they gave me like a week earlier as the due date than my 40-week kind of cycle with my so obviously I think they did say something about the baby was big then, and the 20-week scan, oh, the baby's measuring big. And then when I went to hospital, and I didn't have a scan then, but they measured like my fundal height or whatever that thing is, and they're like, oh, the baby's big. I'm like, fuck off. Like,
it is not big.
It's not.
It's wildly inaccurate.
Exactly. And who cares? He was 4 kilos, which I mean is on the bigger side, but like I birthed him fine. Like, I don't think I had a tear because he was too big. I had a tear because, one, that was this paradigm that I'd heard about birthing, right? And that was also a part of the experience that I was meant to have in hospital. And 2, I didn't have any support in how to like push my baby out in a way that actually like reduces tearing. I was just trying to get him out, and there was no support, no coaching around that. So this time around, because I'm about to enter the birth portal, I'm 35 weeks pregnant with a baby girl. I haven't had any scans. I did really want to find out the gender this time though, so I did order one of those kits that they send to your home, and then you prick your finger and put blood in a little tube, and you send it back to the States. And then they look for the chromosome, the Y chromosome, the male chromosome in your blood. Okay. And so if it's like, I think it's even, they say it's like 99% accurate. I actually heard it's more accurate than having a scan, because they often get that wrong. Like, you know, the penis could be tucked in behind or whatever. And so basically they're just looking at the mother's blood, and you can, if you can see a Y chromosome in there, it means you have a boy inside of you. I think that's right? The male chromosome's a Y chromosome. Yeah. So yeah, that came back. I did it at I think you can do it at 6 weeks. I think I ended up doing it at like 9 weeks. And we got the results back like a week or so later, and then we lit a fire and was going to have a little ceremony to find out the gender. And then we opened the email, and it was like, inconclusive test. We didn't get enough good blood. And I was like, oh my God, am I even meant to know the gender? At this point, I was like, they were like, we'll send you another test for free. That test sat there for months, and I was like, I don't even know if I want, like, I don't know if I'm meant to know. You know, I don't know if I'm meant to know. But then at 20 weeks, I was just, okay, I'm going to do it. We're in the middle of moving house. I either chuck this test out or I just do it. And then, yeah, I got the test results back that I was having a baby girl, and I was like crying with happiness.
Yeah, nice.
So that's the only kind of thing that I've done this time. And I felt good. Like, I was sick in the first trimester with my boy. I've been sick in this trimester with my girl, probably a little bit less, but maybe just because I knew how to manage the symptoms better and knew my triggers and what made me feel better. And I haven't had anything happen where I felt like I needed to go and get a scan or get any testing done. I have seen a couple of naturopaths. I've seen chiro, massage, acupuncture, and that's just, yeah, the support I've had. This time I did want to have, I felt like I wanted to have a bit more support in the space, like someone that knows birth and that trusts birth.
Yeah.
And so now I've got a birth worker that is coming, and that feels really good. That feels like my desire is mostly just to be witnessed in an undisturbed birth, but she does have a lot of knowledge and wisdom. She knows what, for example, she knows what too much blood looks like after birth. She brings all the tinctures. She's very, she only really supports women who are like sovereign birthing.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so that feels good. And so we've just started. So we chose her quite early in the pregnancy in the first trimester, but it's only now getting closer to birth that we've started actually meeting in person and doing some sessions together and preparing for birth.
Yeah,
So
wonderful. So do
yeah.
you feel like moving into this, you're like a little bit after going through that sort of sexual healing process and everything, and like facing the fear of going into hospital, you're obviously trying to move through a like another sovereign birth. And yeah, is there anything that you're yeah, having in place? Like, how does it look different other than your birth worker as well? Are there any other fears you needing to move through? And yeah, anything like
Yeah, I
that?
feel like there's actually been more fears this time.
Mm-hmm.
Strangely, I think maybe because I've already got my boys 2.5, I don't know. I've had definitely more fear around like pregnancy loss at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, but also the same day I found out I was pregnant, one of my good friends here lost her baby, like
Yeah.
in the first trimester, but she miscarried. So I think I've had to work through a bit of that fear. I don't know. A couple of weeks ago, someone in the community here died after childbirth. So that's definitely brought death into my
Mm.
space to be processed.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was pretty anxious for a couple of days about that. And it was actually such a blessing because it's really helped me to accept death,
Yeah.
because I mean, birth and death are the only two things that we can really guarantee are going to happen in this life, right? We're going to be
Absolutely.
born, we're going to die, and sometimes birth and death can occur together, right? Whether
Mm-hmm.
that's like potentially me birthing a stillborn or baby dying in birth or me dying in birth. Like, obviously, I don't think that's going to happen, and I'm not like preparing for that, but it kind of made me accept that reality a little bit
Yeah.
after a few days of working through it. And I think I just landed in a place of just like, well, if my soul has chosen to bring this other soul in and they have a mission in this lifetime that could greatly benefit humanity and my soul feels complete at this stage, then so be it. That's what I've chosen. That's the soul contract that I've made.
Yeah.
And that would be hard. It would be hard for the people that I leave behind,
Yeah.
leaving behind a baby and a toddler without a mother, like, but I also know that they would be okay. Like, I have like a loving community and I have a loving family here, and it's definitely made me speak to my partner more about death and my wishes if that was to happen. I've written like a very in-depth birth plan this time.
Yes. No.
And so I have more in there around what happens if I transfer, my wishes for all the things. If I was to go to hospital, I'm getting the car seats ready to get installed into the cars in case that
Yeah.
does happen. I'm going to have a bag packed for the hospital in case. And no, I think that I'm taking it a little bit more seriously this time. Not so much like the transfer. I don't think I'm going to transfer. I feel like I'm going to birth at home this time, but I don't know. I'm doing a little bit more preparation,
Yeah, I
I
was going to
think,
say
this time.
preparation for sure. And
Yeah.
only and because you've been through it and know
Yes.
that now. You couldn't have known this unless you had have spoken to somebody who'd gone through, or a woman who had shared this journey and
Mm-hmm.
been able to say like, I did this, I did that, and I prepared this. But this is like a new pathway, like a new paradigm we're starting to forge out again. Like I said, I think wild birth and free birth and all of this is just sort of coming back up now, and in a huge way, especially since COVID time, and everything that kind of happened that way. So it is kind of a new, even though it's an old way, it's kind of like we're forging it again, like new way.
Totally.
So we
Yeah.
don't know these things until they're put into place. So you've done the work, you've gone through this lived experience of it, you kind of know, and then you can educate other women now too. Like you're a lot more
Yeah.
prepared and ready
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, physically, with all the like tedious things like car
Totally.
seats. And
And there's still so much unknown and mystery in the birth portal,
yes,
but I don't feel that. Like, I feel like I've done it before. I know what a contraction feels like. I know that I've done a 24, 25 hour,
mm-hmm.
labor before that was really intense and I felt like I couldn't do it and I did it, like I don't know, there's a lot more imprinting in my body around like I can do this. I've done it once, I can
Yeah,
do it again.
yeah,
Yeah, so there feels I'm definitely working through my fears still. I don't necessarily fear the tearing. I just fear like having to like go to hospital and get stitched if I have another third degree tear, and having that I guess, golden first few hours like interrupted. But I've just decided like that if I do tear, and it's bad enough that I do decide to get stitched and I will need to go to hospital, that there's no real rush. Like I can just like I can have the chill at home for 3-4 hours if I want, have food, have a shower, and then go, like it'll all happen on my time if that's the case. So
I love that. That sounds really good.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I feel like in this pregnancy, I've really kind of fully anchored into and embodied my mother. I think what I've noticed is that in so the first year, probably year to year and a half of motherhood for me was brutal. Like I felt like it was beautiful and I loved it. And there were so many like amazing, beautiful things. I think like I really deepened into like a lot of safety and love with my partner, although it wasn't always easy, but we really committed to our relationship and that was really beautiful and flourishing. However, I was just going through such a deep initiation. Like, yeah, I just felt like my whole world crumbled, my whole identity crumbled, and I was just trying to piece together who the fuck I was, and it was a lot. Like it was a lot, and I felt like I was gripping on and holding on to parts of my maiden. I stepped back into my business and started seeing clients at like 3-4 months postpartum. Not because I was like putting it out there and posting and stuff, just mainly because I wasn't marketing, but people were just kind of recommending me and coming to me. So I was like, okay, whatever. But I did a couple of pretty like, big studies as well. Like I studied like clinical EFT level 1 and 2. I did like the Gottman level 1 couples therapy. Like I was really still holding on to my business as this separate identity to motherhood, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. But I was also, now I look back on it, I felt like I was really afraid to let everything die, and just be reborn. And I was kind of gripping and holding on to these parts of that I'd worked on in the past to have something outside of motherhood. And, they served me and that was great. And it was nice to have a little bit of money coming in. However, I just feel like I'm in this place now where I'm just so much more surrendered moving into this next part. And I'm like, I love what I do in terms of my work and I probably will do that on the other side of this, but also it's going to be a bit harder to juggle 2 kids under 3 and so I'm kind of just like way more surrendered to just like letting it crumble and being reborn if it wants to be reborn. I feel so much more. I think I really resisted just being at home with my boy and just like being the housewife. Like that was really hard for me. Like I felt like for at least the first probably even 2 years of motherhood, I was constantly being pulled in 2 directions. Like there was like me wanting to be present, wanting to be there for my boy, and me also wanting to be out of the home doing my purpose work. And it felt like I couldn't do both with ease. And I was being pulled in 2 directions and that I had to it was, I don't know, it was contradicting one another and it was a struggle. And I don't feel that now. I feel like in this pregnancy, I've just kind of like just finding so much more joy in just being a mother. I've still been working like only a day and a half to 2 days a week. But I'm not anymore. I've finished up work. I'm still seeing a few clients, but online, but just doing a few more sessions. But yeah, I'm just feeling so much more satisfied. I don't feel like I'm being pulled in 2 directions. I'm just really feeling like this next evolution and growth is coming from just being a present mother. Yeah, and I'm like finding joy in like folding washing that I've never found joy in before.
You are not. I know you were voice noting me, like telling me that you were, like really nesting and enjoying like being in the home and setting it up. I was like, oh my God.
I feel like I'm enjoying like being a domestic goddess. And, not all the time, not every day. Sometimes it still feels like, oh my God, there's so much work to do. Like it's, I have a toddler who's super messy. Like he is just so messy. And it's like, I just feel like I'm chasing my tail all the time. And I get frustrated and I'm not perfect, but I don't know, I feel content. And I
Oh,
feel like these are the good old days, you know? And I'm like, I'm going to look back on this time and be like, that was such a beautiful, special time having a young toddler and soon a baby. Like, and so I'm just making the most out of that and not
yeah.
wanting to be anywhere else, not wishing I was anywhere else, and just really
Yeah.
appreciating where I'm at.
Yeah, because like who you are, like you are forever transformed by like birth and motherhood and that whole transition, and like who you are on the other side of this, nobody knows.
Yeah.
Like you don't even know yet. And that is like the great mystery of becoming like a mother and like moving into the spiritual realm and birthing your baby. It's like, who do you come back? Who do you birth yourself as on the other side of that? Like it's
Yes.
so interesting and it's always different. Like now you're moving into a whole different era with, you know, two children that will come through. And it's like, well, yeah. And you can surrender and find joy in that and like then cherish a lot more where you are at right now, which I believe is so
Totally.
important.
And there's a part of me that just feels like really proud of like how far my partner and I have come. Like this pregnancy was completely conscious. Like we did, you know, say yes, and we were like really excited to bring another human into the world. And that felt like a testament of the work that we'd done, because
Yes.
it's been hard. It's been really hard, but we've landed in a good place, and that doesn't make us perfect. Our relationship's perfect. We're still having to invest a lot in like a lot of time into like keeping you know, our relationship good, and like keeping, I guess, that glass of our relationship clean and clear, and having all the conversations and
Yeah.
check-ins. And I'm sure there's going to be times where we're feeling really disconnected again on the other side of this journey of like becoming a parent, and you know, we're not making love all the time. It's, you know, it's just different. Being parents is fucking hard, like but it feels so nice to land in this place of like deep love and respect and security, and be bringing a human into that space.
Oh, that's so yummy. That's so delicious. That fills my heart so much. I'm so proud of you.
Oh,
It's
thanks,
like I'm gonna get emotional again. So how are you feeling? Like I feel like it's like naturally coming to a close now. How are
yeah,
you feeling?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel pretty complete,
Yeah,
really.
how do you
Yeah.
feel actually sharing your whole story? Because this is the first time you've spoken it out loud, like in full detail, right?
Yeah, it feels good. It feels like it's been really long. Like I feel like
It probably has
yeah,
been, but
I was
I'm
like,
here for it.
I feel like if you've made it to this point, like well done. Like, and thank you for like, yeah, for going on this journey with us. It's been a joy. It's been a real
It
joy.
really has. And yeah, I always think it's such an honor to hear somebody's birthing story, like all of it. And I actually think it's such a great honor to allow, like, even if you're not a mum yet or whatever, to just really allow like the women you in your life to fully share, to like transmute and like liberate their entire birth story and actually process it on a deeper
Yeah.
level. I think it's so needed in our communities. So that is my bit of tidbit for closing this. Is there anything that you wish to like call in and like sit with? And is there anything bubbling up that you want to share from everything?
No, not really. It felt like it was important for me to like share this story out in the world before I enter this next birth portal. Because yeah, I felt like I've been processing my motherhood journey. I've been processing the deep initiation I've been through to get to this point, and I've been processing more of my birth in preparing for this next birth. And
Yeah.
it just felt like I needed to speak it into form so that that I could fully process it. So
Yeah.
thank you for giving me the opportunity of doing that, and thank you for the people that have committed to the journey and listened to this point as well. I hope you've enjoyed it and you got some pieces out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I do believe it is like, yeah, ultimate liberation for women. Birth can be if
Yes.
you choose it to be.
I'm actually excited about birth.
Yeah,
Like I'm really excited about this next birth, and
yeah.
I'm also noticing that like in the last birth, that opening of the cervix felt really hard, and there was probably resistance, right? Like I wasn't like fully choosing like to become a mother, and that I wasn't fully surrendering, right? So I was So my new mantra at the moment is like I soften and open, like I surrender open, like, and I'm really trying to prepare myself physically, mentally, and emotionally to just enter this next birth with like just full surrender and full like actually excitement, you know? Yeah.
Yes, I'm so excited I get to witness it. Yay!
And I think like it has been hard, like especially this last like a couple of maybe this last month, I've started to feel really sore in my body and just really tired and running around after a toddler, and we moved house like a couple of months ago, and it's just felt hard. And I think sometimes when things can feel hard, you can kind of just like you can forget the joy, and listening to that other podcast of yours brought me back to that. And I was like, I've been trying to like just be grateful for this journey and just shift into that different mindset before coming into the birth portal, and just being like, yes, okay, I'm in physical pain. My back's sore every night. I'm having pelvic girdle pain. Like, I'm having the symptoms and it's not comfortable, but also like, can I still experience the discomfort of it and not like push that down and numb to it, but also experience the joy in this moment of like, we get to meet our daughter soon. Like, I'm so excited.
Yes. I love it because can be true at a time. Like, and they can be paradoxal, but like you can be in pain, and initiations and challenges and like that, they are painful, they are aching, they are like, they can be absolute, like the physical symptoms can so be there, but also there is this other, like this joy, this pleasure, this excitement, this like simmering of like a seed of that's about to be birthed,
Totally.
it's like they're so, and we can weave them together, and it's a choice, and I believe that that is a choice we have to like really consciously bring in.
Totally. Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yay. Thanks, babe.
Thank you very much for listening. And yeah, Sarah's not really taking clients or anything anymore, but I will obviously drop all of her delicious details in case you want to reach out and tell her what inspired you, or like what really activated you, and I congratulate her on a journey. And yeah, I guess that's it. We'll see you next time on Alchemy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I love you.
Love you too.
Bye. Oh yeah.